US President Joe Biden is set to host a virtual summit next week on democracy. It's a first of its kind gathering and not everyone is invited. Well, China is absent from the list and so is Singapore. Asian Insider is a new feature on The Big Story where we bring you insights from our correspondents and experts in their field. The Straits Times US Bureau Chief Nirmal Ghosh has more on the summit and why it matters.
Yes, this summit has been on the agenda for quite some time. It was in fact a campaign promise. It reflects President Joe Biden's worldview, which is that this is not just about a competition between US and China, two great powers per se, but a competition between political ideology and political systems. Democracies have to show that they work, that a society that is free and open and inclusive works for its people, as opposed to, say, an authoritarian regime, a one-party state, a communist state, a dictatorship, a military regime. This is the challenge. Now, democracy has been backsliding. Afghanistan is back in the hands of the Taliban. There have been military coups in Myanmar, Mali, Guinea, Sudan, and under some right-wing dispensations, Turkey and India, for example, the space for freedom of expression has been shrinking. And there are issues even in the United States. In its 2020 report, Freedom House found that in 2019 was the 14th consecutive year of decline in global freedoms. I think it is reasonable to assume that 2020 was the 15th consecutive year. So the idea is to revitalize the global democracy agenda by focusing on the dividends of democracies. The summit will be on December 9 and 10. It is a virtual summit, of course, and it will include civil society and private sector leaders as well as leaders of these countries. The White House mentions three key points: defending against authoritarianism, addressing and fighting corruption, and promoting respect for human rights. And it says it expects commitments to reforms both at home and abroad. The idea is global democratic renewal, so quite a sweeping agenda, but controversy already over the invitee list.
On that, what was the criteria for the invitee list?
We don't know the criteria. That remains a bit of a mystery, and at times it looks arbitrary. So if you look at Asia, for example, the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia are in, but Singapore and Thailand are not. Pakistan is in, but not Bangladesh, not Sri Lanka, not Bhutan. This has raised many eyebrows as to the criteria used. Now, Daniel Crittenbrink, who is Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia and the Pacific, was at a roundtable in Singapore, and he was asked about this, and he acknowledged that, and I quote, there were a range of countries, including some of our closest partners, like Singapore, who were not invited. But this is not a commentary on the strength of our partnership with Singapore, he said. And he described the summit as an opportunity for a quote-unquote select number of US partners. A lot of analysts are, however, saying that this needlessly divides countries, especially in the Asia-Pacific. But having said that, while there may be annoyance, it is unlikely to have any really substantive effect on the strategic aspect of the US's partnerships and alliances in the region. There is another issue. The US itself has been added to the so-called backsliding democracies list in the latest Global State of Democracy report from Sweden's International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, IDEA. Separately, a Pew Research survey about a couple months ago found that among developed economies, most people do not see the United States to be a good example. Even Americans largely think the US used to be, but is no longer a good example to follow. So this is the first summit of its kind, and expectations are not very high given this somewhat unwieldy mix of invitees and the scope and scale of the challenge. But then again, renewing democracy is intrinsically a marathon project.
Thanks, Nirmal. The Straits Times' US Bureau Chief Nirmal Ghosh. You will find more Asian Insider features and analysis online at str.sg/Asia, including a story on why Cambodia's Hun Sen is the man to watch for how Myanmar crisis will play out.